7-3, multiply, divide rational expressions. The first one here, we have to factor and reduce because we cannot reduce a term. So in order for us to factor the numerator, we're going to pull out your GCF. The GCF here is 2x squared. And so 2x squared factored out, you have x minus 4 goes in. In the denominator, we're going to leave it as 6x squared. And we're going to try to reduce. To reduce, the x squared and x squared cancels out. 6 and 2 cancels out into 1 and 3. Your final answer should be x minus 4 on the numerator and 3 in the denominator. Number 2. I want you to go to the numerator and pull out your GCF. The GCF, the greatest common factor, is going to be an x and a y squared. What do you multiply xy squared by to get 5xy cubed? It is 5y. What would you multiply this by to get 2x squared y squared? It's 2x. In the denominator, you have x squared y squared. The reason we factor so we can reduce a factor. In this case, the y squared and y squared cancels out. One of those x's cancels out, and you have one remaining. Write down your answer. The answer is 5y minus 2x divided by x. Number 3. Factoring the numerator, we cannot reduce terms. That means you cannot cancel x squared and x squared. Those are terms. You can only factor and reduce. Factoring the top, what's the product of 4? The sum of negative 5. And that will be x minus 4, x minus 1. In the denominator, we're looking for a product of 1, the sum of negative 2. And that will factor into x minus 1, x minus 1. Now we're reducing a factor. The factor that reduces is x minus 1. Your answer should be x minus 4 divided by x minus 1. We cannot reduce terms. That means I do not want to see you reducing the x's. Number 4. We're going to try to factor the numerator by pulling out the greatest common factor, the GCD. This is going to factor out in x squared, and this will be x plus 3. If you were to distribute x squared, you should be able to go back this way. In the denominator, what's the product of negative 24? The sum of negative 5. And that will give us x minus 8, x plus 3. The factor that reduces here is the x plus 3 and x plus 3. The final answer should be x squared over x minus 8. Number 5. We're going to multiply two rational expressions. Well, one of two ways you can do this, by multiplying the numerator and you get 3xy squared. And the denominator, it gives you 2x times x is x squared, y squared. Now, because these are all multiplied, these are all factors, you can go ahead and reduce a factor. Y squared and y squared cancel. One factors of those x's cancels out, and the answer should be 3 remaining on the top and 2x on the bottom. Number 6, we're trying to divide two rational expressions. Well, we cannot divide expressions, so what we're going to do, we're going to change it into multiplying by the reciprocal. So we're going to keep the first ratio the way it is. It's called copy, change, change. We're going to change division to multiplication as long as we change this ratio to its reciprocal. Now, when we multiply across. We multiply numerator by numerator, denominator by denominator. We can attempt to reduce from here. One of those y's from here cancel with this y over here. There is nothing else to reduce. So in this particular case, what we're going to have is an answer x plus y left in the top, and 28x squared is left on the bottom. Number 7, as you can see, everything is factored out. The only thing we need to do before we start reducing, we can look at this ratio over here and reduce a factor, x minus 6 and x minus 6. So basically, we're going to change those ratio into the first ratio stays the same. And the second ratio I'm going to multiply, division is going to change to multiplication as long as I multiply by the reciprocal of this one. So we're changing from division to multiplication. And so since I cancelled x minus 6, this is the factor that are remaining. When we multiply, we're going to multiply across, which become this is a factor and these are all factors. There is also a factor here that I can reduce, x plus 1 and x plus 1. So my final answer should be 7 times x minus 9 over x minus 2. Now we cannot reduce anymore. You can distribute the 7 if you want to, but you do not have to. And so that will be 7x minus 63 over x minus 2. You do not have to go to here. You could stop right over here. All right, number 8. Number 8, I want you to multiply across, but before we start multiplying across, I want all of these to be in parentheses, and we're going to multiply numerator by numerator, denominator by denominator. Well, in order for us to reduce, we're going to go ahead and factor each one of those factors. So let's go ahead and start with the first factor over here. What's the product of negative 3? The sum of negative 2. It's going to give us negative 3 and positive 1. Next, we're going to go factor this factor. Here the product is negative 63 and the sum is negative 2. And you're going to find this going to factor into x minus 9, x plus 7. Alright, let's go ahead and do the denominator. X squared minus 1, that's a difference of 2 squared. It's going to factor into x minus 1, x plus 1. Next, we're going to factor the last factor right here. We're going to look for a product of negative 21 and the sum of 4. And that should give us x plus 7, x minus 3. Now that we factored everything, we're allowed to reduce factors. X minus 3 is cancelled out. X plus 1 cancelled out. X plus 7 is cancelled out. That's about it. So now we have to write the answer. The answer is x minus 9. It's what's remaining on the top. X minus 1 is on the bottom. And that's your final answer. Please do not cancel the x's. These are terms. You're not allowed to cancel terms. Number 9. We're going to multiply two ratios again. So I'm going to put parentheses around all the quantities first. And then multiply across. When we multiply across, we're going to go ahead and attempt to factor these factors so we can reduce a factor. The first factor we're going to factor is this one. We're going to look for a greatest common factor, and the greatest common factor is x. And that will give us x times x minus 2. The next factor is x cubed plus 9. This is going to be the sum of 2 cubed. X cubed plus 2 cubed. I hope you remember the formula, but if not, I want you to look it up. It's going to factor into x plus 2, x squared minus 2x plus 4. On the denominator x plus 6, there is nothing to factor. It's already a prime factor. X cubed minus 4x, we can pull out the greatest common factor, which is x. But once you pull out the x, you're going to find yourself you have a difference of 2 squared, which is x squared minus 4. And that does factor into x minus 2, x plus 2. Alright, now that we've factored everything, let's go ahead and reduce factors. The factor that reduce x minus 2 and x minus 2. X plus 2, x plus 2. And the x over here and the x over here do cancels as well. And now what do we have left? We have the x squared minus 2x plus 4. This is a quadratic that does not factor over x plus 7. We cannot reduce term. None of those can reduce anymore. We're done. That's our answer. Number 10. Number 10, because we're dividing, I want you to put parentheses around all the quantities. And then I want you to rewrite the problem, but we're going to change division to multiplication. So the first ratio stays the same, x squared plus 2x minus 15 over x squared minus 3x minus 40. Now we're going to change division to multiplication, and then we're going to multiply the reciprocal. So the reciprocal is going to be x squared plus x minus 72 divided by x squared plus 8 x minus 9. So the first thing we want to do, we want to change the division to multiplication, and that will happen if we multiply by the reciprocal. Now we're going to multiply across. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and factor all these factors. And to factor all these, here what we're going to do. On the first one, right over here, we're going to look for the product of negative 15, the sum of 2. And so that's going to give us x plus 5, x minus 3. That's done. The next factor over here, what's the product of negative 72 and the sum of positive 1? So we're looking for a product of negative 72, the sum of positive 1, and that should give us x plus 9, x minus 8. All right, let's go to the denominator. Denominator here is going to be the product of negative 40, the sum of negative 3, which is going to be x minus 8, x plus 5. The last factor here is this one, x squared plus 8x minus 9. The product of negative 9, the sum of 8, is going to give us x plus 9, x minus 1. All right, now that we've factored everything, let's go ahead and reduce a factor. To reduce a factor, x plus 9 is gone. X plus 5 is gone. X minus 8 is gone. And the final answer will be x minus 3 over x minus 1. The end.